please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's pangram.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and we are back on another Academic Integrity podcast series episode with my co-host, who is the most, which you should know that by now, and he is Bradley Emmy. He is co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Elvin. It's a pretty rainy Wednesday, perfect for sitting in and doing a podcast.
That's right. Got that right. So as you always know, we go right into it. So let's bring in our guest right away. And she is Dr. Alejandra Dashe. She is a senior instructional designer at Arizona State University. Alejandra, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for being here. We always appreciate everyone taking the time to come on. So first question we'd like to dive right in is tell us about you. Tell us about what you do and how do you do it?
Well, I'm a learning designer and instructional designer at Arizona State University, and I design a number of courses. The courses I design for are called Universal Learner courses, which they're courses that are for students who haven't matriculated yet into the university and want to. We have a lot of different learners in our groups, in our courses. And the courses I focus on are the science courses. So I generally design astronomy, biology, anthropology, health, healthcare management. Those are the courses that I focus on. And I have a lot of fun with it. We like to use a lot of open educational resources. We also like to use a lot of creative ways to scale out the courses. So to, encourage engagement, but at the same time, minimize the amount of, stress on the team to be able to manage the course, because these are pretty large enrollment courses. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
So, and I know that you were a professor. Tell us a little bit about that before I ask you my next question.
Sure. So before I was a designer, I was a professor. I taught anthropology and biology courses at a number of different universities. My goodness, I'm probably going to date myself here. So more than 25 years of teaching.
Wow.
So yeah, and doing work with students and just loving every minute of it. My emphasis was on human biology and human evolution and anatomy and physiology. What else? I taught all kinds of different courses, culture and health. I taught a course on research, a course on pseudoscience and science. I taught, so that was more philosophy of science. What else have I've taught so many different things, human variation, Spanish, medical Spanish, sex and gender, you name it. I probably have taught environmental science. I mean, like seriously, just like the gamut. I've taught everything in the biology and anthropology, it seems.
Wow. So with that context and your title and your experience, now I'm very curious to hear, how do you define academic integrity?
Oh goodness. Academic integrity. Academic integrity is the act of ensuring that your work is your own. It's an honorable act to ensure that your work is your own. And you do that by, citing your work in the appropriate manner for the field. And you don't copy somebody else's work. You create your own work. You generate it yourself. And, maybe you have help. Maybe you have a support person. Maybe maybe the ideas are, something that you borrow from somebody else, but you cite those, but the concept of putting it all together is your own. Like you create the thought yourself. So for example, in like my own work, if I was when I was doing research on, women's endocrinology, which is part of the PhD work that I did, I went to the library and I read a lot of books and I read a lot of papers and I, and thought about it and wrote notes and created ideas. And then when it was done, I would write the citation next to it because that wasn't my idea, but I can take idea from this person and this person and that person, all these other people, and put them in a particular order to create my own idea. And so that's my own. However, where the ideas are coming from need to be properly referenced. And, I thank librarians for that they taught me very well on how to do appropriate citations. I thank my professors for that. They also taught me how to write appropriate citations. And there's all kinds of tools to help you do that that citation work. And you can cite everything, books, papers, AI, anything. So just say where you got it from. And it's not hard, and if you're not sure, ask your teacher or ask your colleague, just ask. So
Yeah, for sure. So when you define, so you're kind of talking about academic integrity in terms of attribution, right? Which is just basically like taking like giving credit to the people whose ideas you took them from, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. Like my friend XYZ person gave me this idea. I'm giving them credit for it. It's just an honorable thing to do. And it's also fair and, appropriate. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, how do I explain this? It's part of what you do in school, and it's also part of what you do in life. Like when you're at work, I see a lot of people borrowing from a lot of other people, but you always say, yeah, I got it from that person, even if you just do that at the very minimum. So, I mean, you could expand academic integrity from the classroom into like the workplace. Yeah, my friend, Shayna helped me with this, or my friend Jan helped me with this, and they're getting credit for this, or they're a co-author on this project, or something. Give them something. It can take a variety of forms. It just depends upon what context you're in. If in an academic context, APA, MLA, those are your friends. They will help you.
Yeah, for sure. So since you mentioned you teach philosophy, and I like to be an annoying philosopher on this podcast, I might challenge that definition a little bit, because I think academic integrity is a little bit more than just attribution, right? Like in some contexts, it's actually not okay to take other people's work and other people's ideas, even if you cite it, right? Like if an instructor asks you, like, hey, like, I want you to do this homework by yourself, and I want to see what you are capable of putting forth as your own work, then even if I attribute, the solutions on my homework to Elvin, that would still not really fall within the realm of academic integrity, right? So like,
Right.
like when is it appropriate to take other people's ideas and other people's work and attribute it, of course, and when is kind of the situation where you need to be kind of like working through the problem as an individual?
Right. So there's a social context there that sometimes people don't pick up on those social cues and they're not sure, or it's not fully explained in by the policies in the course. And so that's something that has to be teased out better, I think. I know I could have done a much better job of explaining those particular details, but I didn't have any tests that were designed that way. I encouraged the collaboration, so if you're not supposed to be collaborating, then that needs to be explicit and, say you can't collaborate, you have to come up with this work by yourself. And so in that case, there you have another example of academic integrity. You have to do the work yourself. Or if you're being watched by like a plagiarism checker or a what are those programs called? They by a proctoring service, for example, then that you're not supposed to look at your phone when you're supposed to be focused on the computer, or that you're not supposed to have cheat sheets when they specifically said you can't.
Right, like Turnitin's going to catch me whether or not I cite the source.
Right. Yeah, or honor lock or any of those particular programs, they're going to catch you. And then there's a context to it. So like, let's say you are supposed to use a cheat sheet on a test and that's permitted, right? And then the program catches you using it, and it's not set up properly. Well, then the teacher will review the video or review whatever the context is and make a decision case by case basis. And so a lot of academic integrity is nuanced. A lot of academic integrity is culturally understood. And has a cultural context. And so not everybody believes that what I'm talking about, just like you just said, like I think this is what academic integrity is, but then there's more to it. So somebody else might think of it as in a different way. And then if I went to a different country or a different culture, they might say, oh no, you're supposed to copy. That it's considered an honorable act. You have to do it. So you have to think about it in the context in which it's in. So here I'm in the United States. This is the context I'm in. This is how I understand it. But if I were somewhere else, maybe using those cheat sheets and hanging out with my friend while I'm taking the test is completely appropriate. Does that help?
Oh, definitely. And I think that's absolutely right. And I think we define academic integrity largely in relation to each other, right? Like it's kind of like a contract almost between the students and each other, or the students and the faculty. That's why we have things like honor codes. That's why we have like kind of these explicit contracts even in syllabi and policies that kind of lay out like kind of these social norms and community norms that we all abide by. So I like that. I think like in a large way, academic integrity is how we define our own behavior within this larger social context. It's very much like not individual, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yep. Can I jump in, Bradley, real quick? So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Alejandra, is you are an instructional designer, senior instructional designer. Now, how long have you been doing that, and have things changed now that AI is in the mix in your designing courses? And then, so a lot of questions. And then how does academic integrity come into play now? Is that something that you're thinking about when you're designing courses? Talk us through that process. I'm just curious.
So when I started designing courses, when I started teaching courses. That's how you teach a course, is you start with the design, then you teach it. And so the first thing, you don't think of academic integrity right. You think about the learning objectives right away.
Okay.
That's where you start. You always start with learning objectives and you end with the learning objectives. That's the bread and butter of design. If it's not aligned with the learning objectives, then, the course may not work as intended. And so you want it to work as intended, so focus on the objectives. Now, in terms of academic integrity, what you want to do is you want to design assessments and learning activities that align with the learning objectives, but they need to be original, right? Original enough so that the students don't feel like, or the learners don't feel like they have to go to the internet or ask AI now at this point to, for that particular answer. And you might consider, well, maybe I have to vary this every single term so that it doesn't end up on a website where people can, take the answer to that question later. And it's also something you have to accept, is if you're going to create a bank of questions, for example, you might end up seeing them on a website, where people can purchase the answers in a few, after a few runs of the course. In which case, if you start seeing that, you have to be aware that you have to change those particular answers and change the question. So you have to stay ahead of it. That's how you manage the cheating, is that creating original questions with original answers that can't be generated anywhere else, and, changing up your banks. But that's a lot of work. How do you?
Also, do you think the only good assessments are the ones that AIs can't do?
I think that's pretty black and white, and I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. Maybe I think good assessments are ones
because if it's original, right, that means a student can't plagiarize, right? But in theory, like, if an AI can answer the question, then, the originality of the question is no longer a defense against the cheating, right?
Well, no, that's not how that works. So you should be able to answer the question if you've got the knowledge behind you. And a large language model is like a brain, and it has the knowledge, and so it can answer the question. So just because an AI can answer the question doesn't mean it's a bad question. It just means that an AI can answer the question, and that's it, just like another person could. Not that they're the same. A person and AI are not the same. But they're both thinking, right? They're both they have the information behind them, and they can answer the question, and that's okay. I mean, if but here's the other thing. If the teacher sees that this is happening, what could the teacher do to actually encourage those students to think about this? Why is it the correct answer? Why? And you have to figure it out. And if you get the answer from AI cite it, but then you have to go a step further and explain it further. Like, why did the AI say that this is the right answer? And, where are their sources from? Are their sources legitimate? Did you ask the right prompts? Like if you're going to use the AI, use it for what it's worth, like dig deep, make the assessment, and the AI, your partner, in taking the assessment if you're going to do that. Otherwise, if you don't want any AI at all, then you're going to have to keep making new questions over and over and over again and asking them to correct the answers that they got wrong or state why they chose the particular answer with their own words. And then, if you needed to test to see if AI wrote that answer, it's a bit of a vicious circle, but you can really get ahead of it and accept the fact that sometimes you can't control everything. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. So every single term you might want to consider regenerating questions over, over and over and over again. But you also have to think about, well, how long can I sustain that? And the programs that I work in, we don't have that kind of capacity unless we, evaluate our questions every single term. And that's a lot of work with a lot of learners, with a lot of designers and a lot of it's just too much. So, maybe adjust the assignment so that either it incorporates the AI or figure out a way to do it so that it's very, very original. Does that help?
Yeah. So yeah, you keep using the word original. I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. Like, what does original kind of mean in this context?
So let's say you have a multiple choice question that says, what is 2 + 2? And then you've got 4 options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 + 2 is equal to 4. So you pick 4. But the AI decided to say 5 just for fun, right? They gave you the answer 5. And then it was marked wrong, right? And the teacher could tell that they picked the AI answer because it was set up that way. So what does the teacher do? The teacher can also say, okay, why is it wrong? And you need to explain why. And that's how you make it original, is that you have the student explain in their own words why that answer is wrong. And even if they got the answer from the AI, they could cite the AI and then, have the AI cite their sources. And that's how you make it original, is you have them do all the steps, make them do all the thinking that's required for the question and have them do all the work. And that might be a lot of extra work on the teacher, and that may not be as scalable as you'd hoped. At the same time, you also preserve your academic integrity in the course and the student learns more.
Definitely. So like kind of like there's an aspect of like show your work here. It's kind of like, okay, like, don't just give me the answer. Like, let me see into your brain a little bit and like tell me how you got there. That's kind of what you mean by like original.
Right. Yeah. It needs to be, you have to show the proof. You really have to show the proof. And, there's also a certain point where you can't control, what kind of proof you're going to get, because maybe the proof looks the same for everybody, but there are ways to figure out, if the proof was generated by somebody else or not. Or maybe there isn't, and maybe you just accept that and move on. But you did something. You tried to help keep the originality of the question and encourage the learner to be as willing to explain their ideas as much as possible and defend what they're saying is true and keep with the academic integrity policy of the course.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's super helpful. And I think that's, thanks for going in and explaining that. I kind of want to go a little bit back to attribution, because I think this is like a really important concept in like this era of AI. Because I've been an AI researcher for many years, and like kind of like what AIs do foundationally is they ingest millions and billions of sources, and then they essentially like kind of like combine all of those sources together into a black box, and then you ask it a question, and then it gives you an answer and doesn't cite any of those sources, even though that answer is derived from millions of sources in its training data. And so if we were to take that definition of academic integrity as attributing knowledge to where it originally came from, AIs almost by construction don't do that. And like there's obviously like Perplexity and these other deep research and like other AIs that do cite some sources, right? But those sources are not always factual. Like those sources actually don't always point to the actual material that the knowledge was derived from. Sometimes those sources are actually hallucinated, like they don't even exist. And so there's almost no way of tracing the knowledge that comes out of an AI back to its original content. And so, in this scenario where, people are using AI, like, is there a place for AI in academia, where, AI, like citing AI is essentially kind of just a cop out for, citing sources that, the AI actually can't derive from, right? Like, do you think there is a place for people to be citing AI in that way, if it's not really like the original source of the material?
I think there could be, if you prompt it to say, what are your sources? Because you have to ask the AI what the sources are. I mean, when you do a Google search, do you ask Google what the sources are?
But sometimes it'll hallucinate, right?
Yeah, it'll hallucinate. And then you start over and you wait and try it again. Or if it's hallucinating, you to check the sources to see if they're actually legitimate. You have to use some critical thinking skills there. And that's part of the assignment. You have to use it, and realize that it's, not a perfect thing. Just like Google or other search engines, I shouldn't just always call it Google here, but any search engine, those also are not perfect either. They may not, and that's based on SEO, right? Like which site gets up to the top of the list that you get to pick, and only people look at the first page. Well, think about that. Use some critical thinking, or use the library and have a librarian help you use the LLM to write the correct prompt so that you get the sources that you need and have them help you.
Well, I don't think AIs are actually capable of doing that. Like, I don't think AIs are actually capable of pointing their primary source material.
Right. That's the point, is that you have to check what they generate. And then if it's not right, then you have to go look for the primary source material.
Sure. So in that sense, like, if you have to go look for the primary source material anyway, then why would you use the LLM as kind of a middle ground?
To start thinking about it, it's a thought partner. It's not the end. It's just the beginning. It's something that you can use to think about stuff. It's not necessarily, it's not everything, just like you don't say, I did a Google search and therefore I know, like that's your beginning. That's literally your beginning. So you that's where you start. You don't end there. You have to start there and then move to the next stage. So it's the beginning of your research. It's not what you stop at.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember like this whole debate like went on with Wikipedia, like when I was, in high school and college. Like, people would cite Wikipedia and then the professor would be like, what the heck? Like, Wikipedia is not a real source. Like,
Right.
you have to cross-reference Wikipedia with the actual sources, like encyclopedias and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But now it's kind of become common practice for people to just cite Wikipedia, and people kind of take it as fact.
right. It's very common to cite Wikipedia, although I always look it up and look at the sources that Wikipedia has and double check and we use Wikipedia in our classes too, because they're well-written articles. I don't see anything wrong with citing them now. I mean, I remember before I was that professor that said, what is this? I did that and I'm sorry. But I'm very sorry about that now, because now, things have gotten much better with Wikipedia. So, but you always should look to see, this is your start. It's not the end. Look for the original source. It's better that way. And maybe the original source might be more enriching. Maybe they have more leads. Maybe that particular original source has more references for you to branch out and look at. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. And like, if I were reading a paper like in my own field about AI, or like a research paper about large language models, and I saw that the authors like made some claim and then they cited in a footnote, oh, like Chat GPT, I would kind of have this like ick reflex. I'd be like, oh, like how could you trust that? Like Chat
Right.
GPT said it.
Right.
But maybe that reflex will kind of go away as people begin to trust these models more, like as they get better, like as they actually start to point to real primary sources. So maybe we're kind of just in this like awkward adolescent phase right now, where like people like aren't really sure whether to trust it or not, right?
Right. No, I think you're probably right. I mean, it's the same thing when, when Yahoo search engine and Google search engine and, all the search engines for, that started in the 90s. And when the internet started, what is this internet? I don't trust it. And I remember having assignments about how to use the internet in my classes. I would give those assignments out. It was very, very sweet. And like, I remember that time and thinking, oh my God, I didn't trust anything. And now I'm like, if I don't have my internet, I'm in trouble. So, it will change. I think it will change when we, as we become more accustomed to it being as part of our lives,
Oh
What?
yeah, definitely.
No,
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
Bradley.
Go
I
ahead,
just want
Alvin.
to jump in real quick because I'm so curious to know. So, Bradley and I have been doing these academic integrity podcasts and learning so much, meeting amazing people like yourself. And one of the things that I've learned is that every school is different. Some schools, they have the stoplight approach, right? It's like red, no AI, yellow, AI, cite it, right? Your thought partner, green, whatever you want, cite it, whatever you want. It's all good. What's going on at ASU in terms of AI policy, faculty using, students using it? Tell us about what what's going on. Because also, too, what if you create a course, you're designing a course, and it's like, English 101, and there are 3 sections, but one professor is the green light, one professor is the yellow light, the other professor is the red light. That's not fair to those students, So I'm just curious as to what's going on your side of ASU.
So the provost determines what the policies are for academic integrity across the university, and that's also managed by a governing board that manages all the universities across Arizona and called the Arizona Board of Regents. And so all of these policies are managed by them.
Yeah.
And then we take those policies and then put them in our syllabi. And so there are ways that we can, there's approved messaging that we can use in our syllabi that we offer our professors, like, hey, here's this kind of messaging and this kind of messaging and this kind of messaging, and we could probably tweak it so that it, keeps the spirit of it, but also keeps the spirit of what you want to have in your course. I mean, some teachers, it's true, some teachers want to have AI. Some teachers want no AI, they want no part of it. And some are like, let's see what we can do with AI. Let's use it, for what it's worth. And, each class does its own thing. And just because we've got people in, one course doing one kind of policy doesn't mean another course, which has got the same title and objectives and stuff like that, they're doing a completely different policy. Well, that's not about fairness. That's about, like, this is what the teachers put in their courses. This is what they want. And so I follow the teacher's lead on what they want to put in their courses. What I want to put in my own courses is a whole nother situation. Like, if I were the teacher, I have my own policies that I put in my course. But it's really dependent upon, like, how the provost explains the policies that they want to have in all of the courses, and then how the professors interpret them and put them into their syllabi. So that's really how it works. It's dependent upon what, they say, not what I say. I just put it in the course. That's my only job.
Oh, totally. And it's like we talked about earlier, it's like academic integrity. It's about that relationship between the faculty and the student, right? And so it's kind of up to the faculty themselves to define like what they want that relationship to look like.
Correct. And then after that, there's obviously policies and procedures. If, academic integrity violations are found, then you follow the process, and make sure you have evidence and, conversations. And that relationship is really actually very important. Is if the instructor finds something, then they are encouraged to have that conversation with the student or the learner to say, hey, we saw this, can you tell us what's going on? And more often than not, it's, the student saying, I didn't understand. I have this life event happening. I didn't have time. I don't know how to do the work. I don't have time to do the work, like all these excuses, but the excuses are real. And, it's also almost like a call for help in a way. Like, I don't understand the material. Please help me understand the material, and also help me figure out my life because I don't have enough time to do, there's things there that, when you see academic integrity violations, ask the question, right? Ask if that student needs help with something else, because that might be a symptom. of what's really going on.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And we hear from so many faculty too. Like so many faculty are like, oh, like it's not my job to like police my students. Like I don't want to be the cop. Like I don't want to be the detective. So like kind of where's the balance between like kind of like the faculty's responsibility to uphold academic integrity versus the university kind of providing the faculty support in dealing with academic integrity, an area which they may not be an expert in, right? Like
Yeah.
so like kind of where does that balance lie at ASU?
The balance is that as you know, the staff, we just support the faculty and what they want to do. If they don't want to police the AI or police the cheating, or that's their choice. It's literally up to them. They run their course the way they want to run their course, and then we're here for them to help them with any sort of procedure that needs to happen in order to help with these things. That's all there is to it. So as I said, like it's up to the instructor what they would like to do. If they see it but they say, nah, I don't want to do anything about it, okay, that's it.
All right, so unfortunately we're almost close on time. So I always like to ask Bradley, any other questions you would like to ask Alejandra?
No, go for it, Alvin.
Okay, awesome. So Alejandra, thank you so much. Great insights, fantastic conversation. And last question, we would love to know from you, based on your experience and everything that you've done, what do you see as the future of academic integrity?
The future of academic integrity?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so many futures I could envision. I mean, we're developing so many new tools to be able to uncover academic integrity violation, but at the same time, I also, in which case that could reduce the amount, but I also see the opportunity for students to figure out, and just anybody to figure out ways around those academic integrity policies and barriers to, continue to do these things despite the fact that, they're not supposed to. So there's that kind of future. But I also see a much more positive future where we actually change our mindset about it. That we realize that, maybe, demonizing copying and pasting and, telling people they, can't collaborate on things, when the foundation of things like, I don't know, science is purely collaboration. You need to collaborate on math. You need to collaborate on writing. I can envision more of a collaborative future where people don't demonize the academic integrity. Instead, they figure out ways to encourage people to use those behaviors for good. Like, what did you learn when you saw your friend's notes? Maybe there's an opportunity for you to help them with their note taking, or maybe you feel like you have to copy somebody's notes. Okay, maybe you need some support with that. Maybe you need to learn how to take notes better, and let's get you that help. And so in which case you should partner with that person to work with them and how to do it properly. So I really hope that we can change our mind about academic integrity, that it's about, an honorable perspective of citing work and giving people credit where credit is due, and, not, borrowing without attribution, but using the opportunity to, that it's, how should I say this? That if somebody is making the error, perhaps it's another way to say, well, maybe they need help with something else, and you find the help, and then you move forward, and you don't demonize it. You use a growth mindset to be able to help that person overcome the challenge so that they can actually be successful and learn something without having to get in trouble all the time for it.
Yeah, I really love the mindset part of it, Alejandra. I think that's really well said. So again, appreciate your time, and I want to outro my co-host, who is the most, Bradley Emmy, CTO and co-founder of Pangram Labs. Bradley, thank you as always, Bradley.
Thanks so much, Alvin.
You got it. And of course, our guest today, no, she's your guest today. She is Dr. Alejandra Dashe, and she's a senior instructional designer at Arizona State University. Alejandra, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just ed-upped.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series, sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.